Yo, what is up guys, Anthony here back with another Destiny Child video, and in today's Destiny Child video everyone, we're going to be overviewing the ignition system here on Destiny Child Global, of course, a bit as I haven't had the chance to overview it here on the channel just yet. So in today's video, we'll be overviewing the system a bit here, and then we'll have a second part later on during the month to overview which units are better to ignite than others, etc. So in today's Destiny Child episode, it will be a beginner's guide to the Hephaestus Forge. As you can see here in the Knight's World on the top left hand side, we do have the Forge of the Hephaestus. As you can see, there she is, available for the ignition process. Now we do have three options here for the ignition forge. We do have the create core alongside the storage and change core. Now we'll go over the two bottom ones here first just to get them out of the way. We do have storage, which does store all of your core materials. We do have four types of core materials here. First one being the amplified defense core material. We also do have the amplified crits core material, the amplified attack core material, and the amplified agility core material. And this storage does also store your cores here. As you can see, we do have an amplified defense core here available in the storage. Now for the change core here, which does deal with ignition core overriding. Now let's say you did ignite Thisbe, but you did manage to receive a better core later on. You can just toss Thisbe here and swap out her core for a different one. But if you do swap out a core from one of your units, the core that was initially placed on the units will be destroyed. So do keep that in mind when swapping out cores. Now heading into the create core button here everyone, we'll overview it a bit here. Now we do have the main process of creating a core. We do have four types of cores here: the amplified attack core, the amplified defense core, amplified agility, and the amplified crit core. Now with those materials, you'll be needing those for the process of creating a core. Now as you've seen in the storage, we did have a bit of the ignition core materials, but you will need 99 of each material for the desired core. So if you do want an amplified attack core, you will have to have 99 amp core materials and a fodder 5-star unit. So for example, Pan, you'll toss her here with the 99 amp core materials and create a core here for your desired unit. Now a little brief rundown on which cores to prioritize. For the most part, you'll be prioritizing amp attack cores and amp defense cores. Basically, amp defense cores can go on anyone, and with the substats, you'll probably want to prioritize substats such as amplified attack or base defense and maybe amplified agility. Now as for the amp attack core, you'll probably just want to prioritize an additional attack substat, etc. But for the most part, you won't want to be too picky on your core substats unless you just want to get it right on the first time around. But honestly, the core process does require a ton of luck, as RNG of course is involved with the ignition process. Now if you don't get those perfect substats, don't worry, at least you do have the main amplified attack stats here on your core. Now that is the reason why you are creating these cores, so you don't have to go throughout the whole process of RNG with 3 substats. You do have the first one being guaranteed with the amplified attack, so do choose which core you will want on your units. For the most part, you will just toss on an amplified attack core onto your attacker units or an amplified defense core on everyone, as amplified defense can be used on all of the types of units and will do just fine if you do have some amplified attack substats. So substats will help a ton, but you will basically just want to prioritize the main stat here. So let's say you do create your core, you toss in your pan, fodder, and your amplified attack core material. You will click the ignition core creation button here and you will receive a core. Now you do check out your core and see which substats you do have. Now for an example here, we do have my amplified defense core that I did make just a few days ago. We do have the amplified defense, which is guaranteed towards the top. Now that is the core you were creating in the first place, so you will be guaranteed the amplified defense. Now we do have the substats here, so the substats will roll randomly. You can roll substats other than the first type of stat. So other than amplified defense, you will be able to roll amplified attack, amplified agility, amplified crit, base HP, or base attack, as well as base defense. So you just cannot roll amplified defense yet again. So an amplified defense core, you'll ideally want amplified defense at the top, which is guaranteed regardless, and you'll want 2 substats of amplified attack. So as you can see here, we almost do have a perfect core, but in my eyes, honestly, it's very close to perfect, and I'll probably be using this core as it's very amazing because, like I said, the core process does have a ton of RNG involved, and if you do want to see the rates, I will link the moot guide for the Ignition Forge in the description box below, so you guys can see all of the numbers and such of what you are going through here on the Hephaestus Forge. So let's say you did get this amp defense core and want to equip it on a unit. You can click equip here and look for a unit that can be equipped with a core. Now, to equip a unit with a core, you will have to have them evolved to 6-star and at level 60. Now, you don't have to have them +6. You can see a ton of these units being equipped with a core in PvP and such, but they aren't +6. So they will seem very daunting with the ignition process, but not as daunting as a +6 level 60. So you can equip onto any level 60 6-star unit that does have the ignition process available. As you can see, we do have a ton of light and water type units here. Now, why? Just because the ignition process currently isn't available for all of the types of 5-star units. So we currently do have new releases of units available to ignite, and the light type as well as water type units here on Destiny Child Global so far. Now, throughout the upcoming months, Destiny Child will release the ignition process for the wood type, dark type, and fire type units. So don't worry, those will come in time, and just be prepared for when those units do receive their ignition process. Now, let's say you do want to equip this core onto Pomona. You will tap her here and then click equip, and she will be equipped with a core. Now, I'm not going to hand this core to Pomona, as I do want to save it for a future fire type unit for when they do receive the ignition process. Now, let's say you do equip it to Pomona. Now, Pomona will have the first red star here available, so you probably have seen some of these units already. They do have the red stars on their child screen. As you can see, Eve here, fully ignited, 6 red stars. So when a child is fully ignited, they will have 6 red stars instead of the initial 6 yellow type stars. So when you do see one of these units fully ignited, that is a sign that they are at basically their maximum peak of being very strong. So for an example here, we'll go into the top 100, just going off track for a bit. As you can see, a fully ignited Thisbe, she does have 59,000 power, and for this specific core, they did roll amplified attack and amplified defense, as it's guaranteed since Thisbe does have an amplified defense core. So just an example there. And now let's get back onto the guide here. Now, let's say you did equip that core on your Pomona. Now, for example, we'll be using my fully ignited Hilder here. Now, Hilder is fully ignited. She's already done, so all of her skills and such have been increased. So as you can see, this is an example of a unit that has been fully ignited. There is her Quillputh, and we do have her power here. Now, Hilder doesn't have the best core available, but she does have amplified attack, which I did only want on her as well. Now, if I do receive a core that is better than the attack core that she does have already, I can just swap it out in the Hephaestus Forge. Now, I don't prioritize the substats too hard, as honestly, the main stat does seem to be enough for me. Personally, in my eyes, it does seem to be enough. Now, ideally, you'll want to prioritize amplified attack on your attacker units, and so on. Now, back to the Quillputh here. So for example, here is Pomona, like we did talk about before. Once you do attach a core onto her, she will have these substats here available. So for the first one, you'll have the amplified defense, let's say amplified attack, and then base attack. Now, going throughout the Quillputh here, you will be required to toss out a lot of fodder cores and a ton of fodder 5-star units. Now for the middle path here, you will be required to toss out a core and an additional 5-star light type unit to unlock these nodes. So you will start out for the first one here and will be required to toss out a fodder 5-star unit, base rarity, and an ignition core that you won't use. So you can see on how the ignition process is very expensive. So as you've seen before, creating a core takes 99 core material and a 5-star unit. Then you'll have to come into the ignition forge here, toss that core and an additional 5-star unit. So it's very expensive when igniting a unit fully, but if you do manage to complete it, you will be very happy with going through the process. Now, igniting a unit does increase their power a ton, as you've seen my Gunslinger Hilder and some of those units in the Devil Rumble already. Now, throughout the process, you will receive your stats, they will go up, and you will receive those red stars. As you can see, we do have 4 stars here when getting towards the bottom, and upon completing the quill path here for Pomona, you will get those very beautiful 6 red stars, and you will have the ignition level up to 12, and she will be fully ignited. Now upon igniting a unit, you will also receive their skills leveled up. So for example here, Pomona does receive a ton of buffs here towards her tap, drive, and slide, just like other units do. Now for Pomona, she's very nice when fully ignited. As you can see before, she only applies her slide skill to 2 allies, but after being fully ignited, she does apply this to 3 allies. So a huge buff here on the slide skill, just for an example of a unit when they are fully ignited. But do keep in mind, Pomona will be strong even before this, just with equipping a core on her. So with just equipping a core on her, you will see your unit's power going up, and going throughout the quill path here, you will see the units grow a ton and eventually will receive a huge power boost. So for example, Pomona 27,000 power compared to Thisbe here with a whopping 53,000 power. Now my Thisbe does have an amplified defense and amplified agility core, probably not the best core, but does the job just fine. She does have her skills maxed ignition. So as you can see, Thisbe, for example, does have the ignition slide skill here, which does grant it to 3 allies rather than 2. So it's very nice to ignite a unit, and basically just wanted to overview the process a bit of igniting a unit. Now in the next video, we'll overview on which units are better to ignite than others. So for example, on maybe why Gunslinger Hilder is better to ignite than Bridal Hilder. So we'll overview that in a later video, as honestly there aren't many tier lists on units to ignite. I have seen a few on Reddit float around and in the Destiny Child global discords and such, but we'll touch on the units in a second part of the ignition guide, as in today's video I just wanted to touch on the features of the Hephaestus Forge and on why igniting a unit is very important in the late game of Destiny Child. Now if you are a newer player, don't worry about the ignition system too much. Honestly, I would just suggest to avoid it for now and prioritize expanding your archive and preparing for events. Now if you do manage to prepare for events and do significantly well, then maybe start to worry about the ignition process a little bit more if you do want to have a better performance in those events, or of course the Devil Rumble side of the game. But anyways everyone, that'll do it for today's Destiny Child video, and of course the first part of the guide for the Hephaestus Forge and ignition. So make sure to let me know in the comment section below if this guide was helpful at all with understanding the ignition forge a little bit more. Now I know it was a ton of beginner information, but I did want to get this part of the ignition guide out there, as honestly not everyone is a veteran player, so maybe the newer player does need this guide a ton. So I did want to get this video out there for my newer players here of Destiny Child Global, as it can be a bit daunting when approaching an ignited unit and the system in general. So in a later video, it'll be much more sided towards the veteran players as which units to ignite, or maybe which units are doing better than others in the PvP meta right now and such. And maybe in later videos we'll do some PvP oriented videos just to showcase how these units do deal. But anyways everyone, if you did enjoy today's Destiny Child video, make sure to leave a comment down below, and of course make sure to leave a like on this Destiny Child video, as well as make sure to scroll down below and subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet done so already and are enjoying the Destiny Child content, and of course would like to stay tuned for those future ignition guides here on the channel. But with all of that being said everyone, I'll see you all in tomorrow's Destiny Child video. As always, thank you all so much for watching.